welcome to the Nasquay Hall, the other Nasquay Hall. There's two of them. It confuses all of us, but this is the Brookville Hall, as I like to call it. We're welcomed here by the Campbellville Community Association, who put this on. Jennifer, if you'd like to introduce the Campbellville Community Association, all the great things they do. It's not just political meetings.
Yeah, we do fun things too. Not that this isn't super fun, but so welcome everybody. I'm so glad we almost ran out of chairs. This is so exciting. So many people, and I know we've also live streaming it to Facebook, so there's lots of people watching online if they can on their internet. My name is Jennifer Sibbett. I am the president of the Campbellville Community Association. One of our mandates is to get people together to learn about what's going on in our community and the issues and stuff, so we really get excited about this kind of stuff because this is bringing the information, the candidates directly to you. Sorry that I'm standing behind you, by the way, but I feel super good. So welcome. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. And then while I have you here, if you want to become a member of our association, we do a lot of other things too. Like we had an outdoor movie night in the summer. We've done festivals in the past. We helped with the entryway Campbellville sign. And then one of our super exciting events that are coming up is the Campbellville Santa Claus Parade, which we're hoping to do en route this year because the past couple of years we've done a reverse one. And the other thing that you might want to keep in mind is that we've applied for the RCMP musical ride again, so we're hoping that we get selected for that, so that'll be coming this summer. So if you follow us on Facebook, and like I said, our website is www.campbellville.net. I know I speak really fast, so by all means find me later, because I'm super nervous and I hate talking about people. All right, good. Thank you so much.
And my name is John Hofstein. I'm a chicken farmer out on Second Line. I'll be the moderator tonight. I've been, Ward 1 resident for now 50 years, because I just turned 50. And other than a couple years off of school, we've always been here. So, again, welcome. I'd like to introduce now Colin Best, parking attendant extraordinaire. But he does so much more for our community. And Colin, you are acclaimed to the regional seat for this ward, but I just want to give you an opportunity to say something.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone, for attending. This is the largest candidates night in Milton, so I appreciate you showing your respect for democracy and coming out. And I'm looking forward to your questions that you can ask these candidates for me, but I'm not running for anything, so I'll be the back heckling these guys.
We also have some other people running who are in the audience from our trustees. I know Donna, is there any others? Introduce yourself. Is there any others?
Good evening. My name is Donna Daniele and I'm running for re-election for the public school trustee. And I know nobody came here to see me, so I'll say that you can talk to me afterwards and my literature's on both tables. Thank you.
Trustee candidates right here right now. Do we have any other? Just to get any other candidates running in Milton who want to show that they're here. Hello. You can stand up and introduce yourself and what ward you're running in.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm Samira Ali, and I'm running for regional councillor in Ward 4, which is the southwest of Milton. Nobody came here to see me either, so I'm just going to keep it short. I'm here for questions after the debate. Thank you.
All right, then what we're going to do, we're going to get right in with our candidates. They're all going to have 2 minutes to make an opening statement. You know, who are they, what do they do? And with about 10 seconds left, I'll ring my little bell. Everyone's excited that I brought my bell back. So, and if, about 10 seconds, I'll ring a little bell. If they keep talking too long, I'll ring it again. And I'll keep ringing it until they stop or I throw the bell at them. Either way, whatever works. So we're just going to start from this end. Andrea, I hope you're all good with first names. And you can introduce yourself for...
Is this working?
There we go.
Okay, just in case I didn't have enough projection. So my name is Andrea Grabens, and I have lived in Halton for 43 of my 50 years. I am currently a school board trustee with the Halton District School Board. I work currently with Donna Daniele, and I was board chair for 4 years. I'm also an entrepreneur. I've had my information technology consulting business for the past 20 years, and I teach at McMaster University. I love Halton. I want to grow old in Halton. I want my children to live in Halton and be able to do that. And I think that there are some improvements that need to happen in Halton, and I believe I'm the best person to advocate for that and to bring those improvements forward. We can't just stay the way we are all the time, resting on our laurels. We need to move forward. We need to look at affordable housing. We need to maybe move to regional transit. We also need to look at long-term care, helping seniors stay in their homes longer independently. We need to make sure we're ready for cybersecurity threats, and we need to make sure that our social housing is actually helping people move from a temporary state of need back to being independent. So I hope you'll consider me. My website is full of information. Please check it out. Most of you have my pamphlet. I think I have some wonderful volunteers with me tonight. One is my mother, and she is my best campaigner. And I'm sure she's the one that probably popped it into your hand. And I'm looking forward to hearing questions from you tonight. Thank you so much.
Now, Andrea brought these microphones for us, so thanks, Andrea, very much. So I think that'll really help. And again, with my 2 minutes there, this election really is about experienced leadership and fiscal responsibility. I'm going to suggest to every one of us, before you get out and mark your X on the ballot, do your homework, and I really mean do your homework on every one of us. It's very easy for us, including me, to make promises. And I just wonder with the group here, how many of you heard me make promises that I never kept? Because if you did, I don't make promises. The only promise that I make is I'll work hard for you, as I always have. Some of the issues that we have to deal with, of course, is the GTA population. Those are issues. Schools, hospital, tax increases. I'm here to protect your tax dollar. Some of us is going to, be spendthrift. What might happen if you look at some of those promises, you're looking at tax increases of double digits. So you might want to think about that. Climate change. I'm not a climate change denier. It's here and has been for quite a few years already. Town of Milton, and I was part of it, as well as the present-day council, on moving towards electrification with our town vehicles, buses included. So we're doing our thing there. Green space is very important, and just in case anybody ever wonders whether I'm serious about that or not, I've been a Conservation Halton board member for many years, and I'm presently a Niagara Escarpment Commissioner as well. So as from Niagara Falls right clean through to Tobermory. So and again, when I wrap up there, just make sure you vote for Gorb Krantz if you want to have a great community for the next 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Hi everyone, those of you who don't know me, my name is Zishan Hanif, though my friends just call me Z, so Z's just fine. I've been in council for 12 years, and I first ran in 2010 because I was concerned about the representation my neighborhood was getting, or lack thereof. I felt that, and it's something that I've always said past 12 years of the council as well, I felt that the statement that is only one Milton kind of averages things out. Milton in reality is a collection of distinct communities with their own history, their own heritage, and more importantly, their own needs. So at the time when I ran, I was involved, I was a member of Milton Transit Advisory Committee that sadly no longer exists. I was also a member of Sustainability Committee that also no longer exists. And at the time I used to interact a lot with people in Cycling and Trails Committee that no longer exist. And I think you can see the pattern. Heritage Committee no longer exists. So one of the reasons why I made a decision to move up to this seat and run for mayor is because of the very same reason I ran in 2010. In 2010, I felt that my community and my neighborhood was not represented the way I wanted to be represented, and now I feel that there are a lot of distinct communities in Milton, such as the rural community, and they're not getting the representation that they should get. And one of my platform planks, and I am actually making a lot of promises, and I invite you to go to my website and look at my promises, because I believe that politicians should run based on promises. So 4 years from now, you can judge us and see if we kept our promises or not. So I have distinct promises, and one of the promises I'm making, which is what I want to highlight today, is we need to bring back citizen advisory committees. Milton is one of the very few municipalities that do not have citizen advisory committees. And that was a mistake. Not just the committees we have mentioned, but we need to have a rural advisory committee, because I'll tell you honestly, and it's something that you all have had conversations with councillors, and I have as well, most of us live in an urban area, so our life experience is very different from your life experience. And we don't understand your issues the way you do, and unless we have a venue where you can come teach us and tell us, educate us, we won't do a good job. With that, I'll sit down and look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Christina Tesser-Dirksen. I've been the councillor right here in Ward 1 for the past 4 years. I am a local lawyer. I'm married to a local small business owner. I have 4 children. They're all still living at home, even though they range in ages from 26 to 17, because I can't afford to live anywhere else right now. I have a passion for public service. I sit on a number of boards and committees. I'm the chair of the fundraising committee for the Townsend Smith Foundation. We're seeking to build a palliative care hospice for North Halton. I'm I am a board member, of Milton Public Library Board. I am a member of the Nassagaweya Community Consultation Committee, and I've done great work with the committee there and learned lots about rural issues. I actually grew up on Appleby Line in Milton Heights and just moved over to where I am now about 8 years ago at Tremaine and Main Street. So I'm really, the point I think of the role of a councillor is to listen, to advocate. I can't fix everything by myself. Councillors are 1 vote on a council of 9. So there really has to be a lot of collaboration and a lot of civility in politics, I think. And that's something else that I think that I bring well and do well on council, is work with others. There are times when we disagree. There are lots of times when we disagree. But what we do and the goals that we have are really to make the town better for everyone, including ourselves and our families that live here. So I'm always happy to answer questions. I consider myself quite responsive. I am a really good multitasker, so I'm happy to keep lots of balls in the air at any given time. So I'm looking forward to all the questions tonight. I want to thank the Campbellville Community Association for organizing things and all the volunteers who set up. And really, the fact that there's so many people here engaged in this is really reassuring, because I'm sure you know voter apathy is at an all-time high. People just aren't as engaged as they used to be. And it really makes our job a lot easier when we have citizens who are engaged in a dialogue with us. So thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is George Minikakis. I have lived in the area, my family's lived in the area for 50 years. My wife will tell you I've only been around for 5, because I always travel on a plane somewhere. So, by way of background, I have run corporations for a living. One of them was PepsiCo, others with a group called Exotica. Some of you are wearing eyewear, LensCrafters, Pearl Vision, sunglasses. I built those chains in Canada and in China. So my background is financial, it's business development, it's market development, and currently I am the chair of Milton Hydro. So if you have a hydro bill problem, we can talk it later. And I've been the chair for Action Milton for 4 years, but I stepped away so that I can do this role and run in it. I'm a very strong advocate for public service. I believe that the voice of the people matters more than anything else. And a lot of groups have been shut down and not able to speak their voices anymore. When I've been knocking on doors, and a couple of people have been helping me knock on them, I keep walking on the door and saying, I'm knocking on 7,000 doors, I got another 5,500 to go. And they laugh, but then they start telling me what's bothering them. And things that are troubling them is it's growing fast. It's the fastest growing community, but they want to see it become the smartest growing community. And I agree with them. That has been part of my platform. And at the same time, I'm also saying that if we're going to be successful at this, you need a counselor who has full-time focus on it. I don't work for a living anymore. Thankfully for me, my wife's not happy about it, but I can apply a great deal of time and effort in this role and make a significant difference, because I've done it with Action Milton, and I can do it here again in this role. So I look forward to your questions and this evening. Thank you.
All right, folks, now the excitement happens. The power goes to this side of the room, you could say. That is with a few caveats. First of all, for questions-wise, I understand sometimes questions need a little bit of context. If I say, you say to the counselor, do I prefer, red or black, it would be interesting to know if you're talking about licorice or fire trucks, right? That makes sense. So a little bit of context. But if you want to make a speech, there's a chair beside Jennifer, and that is there for you 4 years from now. By all means, you're welcome to have it, especially for this, for our community. Now, questions-wise, we're going to, just sort of put your hand up. I would like to have one question per topic. I have a feeling I know one of the first topics is going to be, but if we could have like one, if you have a question, and that topic comes up, either come up with something else or let someone else have a chance, that kind of stuff. And just to our candidates, you're in the rural area, and everybody here, we're in the rural area, so we know that smell, so don't try to give it to us, okay? Just so you know. But I know you won't. And this is just a big kitchen table discussion. That's what we want. We want to have, you ask a question, they'll give answers, and the only difference between this is I will be timing the answers at the kitchen table. So, all right. Anyone, first question? I'm opening it up. Right over here. First hand up.
A communication question for the 2 Ward 1 councillors.
Okay.
Christine, I supported you in the last election. I was used to Cindy in her very active communication on a weekly basis. I was a little disappointed that I didn't get that communication from you. So, actually I didn't get any communication. That could be I'm not on the right distribution list, so I want to be respectful of that. The question is for George and Christina. How are you going to reach out to us on a weekly? There's so many social media platforms, and I know there's, subscribe and unsubscribe, but how are you going to reach out to us on electronic formats?
Okay, we'll start with Christina, because you did address it to her, and we'll give you 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. What was your name?
Cliff Bowers.
Cliff, okay, hi. Thank you very much for your question. I apologize if you felt like the communication wasn't the greatest. I consider myself a very good communicator. As far as how I communicate, I do utilize social media quite a bit. So if you're not on those channels, then I can see how you would get that information. You can email me anytime. You can text me. You can call me. My personal cell phone number is published. You can come to my house. My address is published. Like, I really am out there. Not only that, but I spend a lot of time in the community. I'm talking to people. I'm involved. I'm supporting events. I'm distressed to hear that you feel like I wasn't communicating well. But to address what you're saying, I've actually just finished the first issue of a newsletter. So it was actually for the summertime. So if you go on my website, you can subscribe to the newsletter. It's not going to be weekly. It probably quarterly, and then if there's really important issues that come up, then I can do kind of a special edition type thing. So that's more for folks who prefer to get an email into their inbox. I find that I have so many of those coming into my inbox, newsletter this, newsletter that. I didn't see as much value in it before, but I have had a couple people reach out and say, no, we'd actually like to see that. So I have started that. But again, anytime you want to contact me, and I like to think my response time is pretty good. Does that answer your question from my end? Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
George.
Thank you. So I'm a communications guy. So running companies with thousands of employees, you have to communicate, and we did it regularly. And what I plan on doing is creating a newsletter that's going to be accessible to everyone. I'm not sure what I'm going to call it yet. I may actually ask residents to call it something. But the idea would be that I would be updating you regularly on what's happening. And one thing that I want to make sure of when I'm doing this newsletter is that there are no surprises to you. I want to make sure that you're apprised of everything that's going on, because most of the issues that take place are development related, and it's about 80 or 90% of them. And I believe that that is part of the breakdown in communication that people struggle with. And reaching me is not hard. I mean, I have an email and a phone number that I've actually have a second cell number now that set up so that if I win, or when I win, that I will, you'll be able to have access to these. So, as an executive, I'm used to being on call all the time.
And just because the communication is such a big topic, maybe we'll allow our mayoral candidates as well to have a little bit of a communication, and our chair Kennedy as well. We'll start with Mayor Kennedy.
Yeah, thank you again, Mr. Chair. It's an excellent question, and again, if anybody ever suggests to you that I don't return a phone call or an email or whatever it is, then you let me know, because I get a lot of that stuff as well. I'm the first one to admit that I'm probably not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I work very professionally. If I get an email, it's responded to. If I get a telephone call, regardless of whether it's at the town hall or at home. And I'm probably one of the very few people that's published his telephone number ever since I was elected, so many years ago. Did 40 years ago and still do today. So you find somebody that says I never returned a phone call or never returned an email or communicated with them, and let me know who that person is, and then I'll tell you, I don't think so.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just really quickly, I won't repeat what everyone else said, but I'm pretty active on social media. In fact, there was a magazine recently that found that I was the most followed local councillor in all of GTA. I also have a large email list that you can subscribe to on my website that you've been able to subscribe to for past 12 years. And as I learned during this election, something I didn't know, a lot of rural residents are subscribed to it as well. I have no idea how you found out about it, but somehow you did, and somehow you got into it. That's how I like to get the message out. And I send them out fairly frequently, and if you lived in Ward 4, then Councillor Elise here, she and I typically send out a newsletter 3 or 4 times a year by mail. So you've gotten that as well. So we have a number of channels that we use, and as a mayor, I'll continue to use that. And just really quickly, in the council, I've had several motions. Unfortunately, they all failed to start councillor newsletters, like every other community. And I think Milton is the only community I know of in GTA where councillors do not send out newsletters actively. And what happens is citizens often do not find out what's happening in their communities because councillors do not have a budget, really, to communicate. So it's not councillors' fault, it's just that Milton doesn't actually have a venue. We used to send out a Town of Milton newsletter, but a few years ago we stopped doing that as well and switched exclusively to email, which was a shame because not everyone's comfortable getting newsletters on email. So that's my answer, thank you.
Okay, so currently I'm a school board trustee. I have been for 8 years, and with Donna. And our personal cell phone numbers are sitting right on the website. And if you think people get upset about municipal type stuff, you should try being a trustee, because when the mama and papa bears come out, it's pretty fierce. And we have no administrative assistant, we have nobody to kind of, hide behind. We are right there. And so I love talking with the public. I'm also very involved with social media. I have my own Facebook and Twitter. I'm not big on Instagram, but I do it. And lots of followers. And so as chair of the region, I would certainly, I'm not sure that everybody wants a lot of information all the time from the region, but I certainly think that having a spot on the website as well as a quarterly newsletter sort of thing would be very appropriate. So there you go.
All right, thank you for those answers. And us rural people are on your list. Want to keep an eye on you. Always want to keep an eye on you. Okay, way at the back, I see a hand up. Yes, right in the middle. Gotta yell really loud.
Okay, my question's for all of you. I'm living up on 30th Side Road. I have virtually next to no internet. It's been an issue for us for many years, and nobody has addressed it. Federally, they fund it, but it funded up, I think, 20 Side Road, and it's like bringing it this, and you go above 15 Side Road out here. So what is the town of Milton going to do to correct our lack of having internet facilities available to us? We're actually even being excluded out of the divide in the federal election. North of 15 Side Road is being included in Washington County. So I'd like that addressed as well, what we're doing with that.
Okay, so we're going to start down at that end. Yes. How can you help the rural internet issues? Because they are serious.
Okay, so my job is, we've actually come across internet issues at the school board because, as you know, many of our students had to use internet over the past few years. And the school board tried to solve the problem with specific, I don't know if there's satellite hookups or something specific. But I think what needs to happen is that this needs to be a conversation with the provincial and the federal government, because it doesn't fall under their area. We need to have them sit down. We need to advocate on behalf of you to get that done. And I'm a great advocate, and I've worked with the provincial government more than the federal government, but I'm a whole 5'2". I'm not intimidating, but I'm a very squeaky wheel. So I make people listen to me. So that's what I have to say about it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question there. Milton has advocated for quite some time, as well as the region of Halton. And of course, just recently as probably 2 months or so ago, there was a small portion of rural Milton that was included with further services there. Mr. Chairman, with your permission there, Councillor Best was acclaimed locally, Councillor Best was acclaimed regionally, and he also was acclaimed provincially to the AMO board, and that's the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, that represents 444 municipalities, and as just mentioned, the partnership with the province, especially in the federal government, is ongoing, not only with Milton, but with those 443 other municipalities. So, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I think we might want to hear from Colin on that, because he is very, very close to that at the provincial level.
What we'll do is we're going to let all of you have your say, and then I'm going to have Colin.
Yeah, very good, thank you.
Thank you. Definitely Colin's fault. In all seriousness, and something I've repeated often online in council, is that internet access is as basic a necessity in 2022 as hydro, really. It's water, hydro, internet access, because if you don't have internet access at home, and you've seen all the online learning and everything else that happened during COVID, without a fast speed, high speed, not just basic internet, but without a high speed internet access, we create a two-tier community, and that's not okay. Unfortunately, as others mentioned, it's not a municipal jurisdiction. However, municipalities do lobby and advocate on behalf of their residents on things that are not in municipal jurisdiction. And one of the things that I sometimes get criticized by some residents in Milton is they feel that I'm one of the councillors who've kept the CN issue alive. Because it's something that I feel passionate about. And I think that's an area that's one of my strengths. I'm not strong in everything, but one of my strengths is advocacy and lobbying. And I think this is one of the areas where Milton has spoken up on, but I feel that we should do more. We absolutely need to do more and put a lot more pressure on upper levels of government for them to recognize that this is a basic necessity in 2022 that needs to be taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you. My husband is in IT, so I understand the frustrations he deals with when he's trying to help people get their internet going. It's an ongoing issue. Like, everybody knows it's a problem. The pandemic really exposed how reliant we are on internet. When kids were at home trying to study, I had residents calling me saying they couldn't pay their staff because they do it online. It's like having your hands cut off. Like, you really can't do anything. It is a federal jurisdiction, but like Zishan said, we lobby, we advocate, had numerous meetings, and Colin has as well with our MP and our MPP, and it's a matter of being the squeaky wheel. Now, there is some stuff we can do at the local level too, and there's some innovative ideas. The region of Halton, I believe, is rolling out kind of like a 5G program where they are looking at actually renting, selling space on vertical assets, poles, right? So there's 80,000 hydro poles in the area where wireless communications or transmitting devices could be affixed to, right? So I'm not an IT expert, but I mean, it sounds like that would probably go a long way to bring some more access to people in the rural area. I know what the mayor was referring to was, I think there were, between Haltonville and Moffat, there were like 324 homes, and then in Brookville, there was another 327, right around there. There were some new homes that were brought into the fold. It's a slow process. I can't tell you I have a magic bullet. I can't snap my fingers and suddenly give everybody internet access, but we know of the problem. We're aware of it. We're talking constantly with our provincial and federal partners, and we're doing our best to solve the issue. Believe me, the sooner the issue is solved for everybody, the easier it is for all of us too.
Okay, so maybe I can answer your question more thoroughly. So, being on Milton Hydro, Hydro is actually working with the other utilities to put together a plan so that 5G is actually available to start with. So it is a plan. Progress on it is a little slow because all of them need to agree on the parameters of how a deal would work out. Secondly, I've been researching this because I live out here and internet is always sporadic, even when you're in a cul-de-sac. So as of August 2022, the government actually, the federal government and the provincial government struck a deal with some $2.5 billion that is actually earmarked to drive internet to rural areas. So what's happened is the Ontario government has signed off on several contracts at this point. Rogers, Bell, Cogeco, ExploreNet, the reports that come to mind right now, they have a lot of money that's been provided towards them so that they can actually start building an infrastructure to provide rural internet. The goal is that by 2026, 98% of all households in a rural area will have internet, and you would have somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 megabits of upload and 10 megabits of download. By 2030, it will be 100%. So those are the real numbers out there, just to give you timelines and what's going on. Hope it helps.
Okay. Colin, did you want to jump in?
Yes, thanks for the question. I'll try and speak from here. It is, everyone really highlighted the questions there. Both the provincial and federal association municipalities have been pushing this the last 10 years because, like you, I live in the rural area. I've had similar problems. It's something that we are continuing to push, not only from the local hydros and utilities, but also municipalities, because we know the need. We know that for education, for business, for farming, we need to have that high-speed internet. So it is coming, and as you can see here, everybody's endeavoring to deliver it.
All right, yeah, it's a tough, the internet is a tough one. We have topography. We've done such a good job in protecting all our woodlots that they block all the line of sight stuff, so this is an issue. Right there with hat, sir.
Okay,
And you'll be behind is the next one. Yeah, no, you're first, you're first.
Okay. Yeah, my question is about the quarry on Reed Side Road. There seems to be a deadly silence. You know, as a council got a gag order, nobody's saying anything, is nothing happening? I just don't know. I'd like to thank you, George, for your work done so far on that. You know, when you were head of, you know, that organisation.
Okay. I'm sure this topic is going to come up. This is the one I thought would have been first. But anyway, so we're going to start with George and then Christina to go down.
So yes, it's been dead silent and radio silence. So we've asked a lot of questions over the last few months and not always gotten any answers. You know, we've been waiting. Some of the members of Action are in the room. I will tell you one thing. I mean, you're going to hear a lot of promises today about what everybody's going to do to ensure that you know, this ends in the right way. But I'm not going to make you a promise. What I did instead on September the 8th was I sent a letter to the Premier, because when I get elected, somebody might try to mute me from speaking, and I'm not going to allow that to happen. So I wrote a letter to the Premier, basically asking for that update. Because he stood in front of a group of people, Fort Grants as well, saying that they're going to stop this one way or the other. But on March the 5th of 2020, we were in this room, and we had a promise for an ICBL. That ICBL never came to fruition. It died. We had a lot of promises, and they not come to fruition. The only reason the Campbell Quarry has not moved any further is because of you. You have signed letters, you have written letters, you have made phone calls. All of this has happened because of what you have done. And I don't disrespect anybody here, but something's gone wrong on the political side, that it's been shut down, and we're not getting access to information, so we've been left on our own. And that's an argument that I've been making for quite some time.
Sorry, may I ask what ICVL is?
Interim control bylaw. Sorry, there's a lot of acronyms.
I know, we use a lot of acronyms and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, call us out for that's not interrupting, that's just clarifying, so that's good.
Thank you for the question. We all knew it was going to come up, and I want to thank Action. I also want to thank George for all the work that you did. I, as a counselor, have been involved with Action, taking meetings, taking phone calls. My record is pretty clear. I've opposed it from the beginning. We all have. There's really no question about that, and it has been radio silence. As you know, the environmental assessment was ordered. Now that is a proponent-driven process. We have to wait for the quarry company to start that, and they have not. Is that good news? Is it bad news? It's certainly unsettling. It would be nice to have answers, but we can't force the quarry company to start the EA. What it means is that they cannot progress with their permits until that EA is complete. That's where it is. Now, we've been doing our part as far as the joint agency review team, going over all the technical analyses. As you know, there's lots and lots of technical stuff that gets reviewed by our experts. We put forward our questions, we file our letters of objection. We did have a provincial election in June, so what we did is we sent a letter to the new minister of the MNRF, and then the poor man, I cornered him in Ottawa in August, and Colin helped me, and I explained to him the situation. He asked some good questions, and I said, can we get a meeting? We need to tell you what's going on and how it's going to affect our neighborhoods. And he said, yes, let's arrange a meeting. So now we've been sending letters and emails trying to get this meeting. He's more than likely waiting for this election to be done, because if I'm not the counselor, he doesn't want to meet with me, right? So to answer your question, it's been quiet. We would like answers. We would like to give you answers. There's no gag order. There's some confidential legal stuff that could put us in a very serious position if we look like we're acting in bad faith. So we have to be careful. We have to protect everybody in town, right? We have to protect the corporation. We have to protect our residents. So there's nothing untoward going on. We haven't had answers either for a while. Thank you.
If you look at what happened with the Glen Abbey project in Oakville, town of Oakville, there was a golf course called Glen Abbey. There was a development proposal there that they had full legal rights to proceed. And town of Oakville decided that they did not want to follow the regular process because the rules were stacked up against them. And they turned into a political issue. And they politically lobbied so hard that the provincial government, provincial minister stepped in and issued an MZO order to stop that project from happening. A few years prior to that, Oakville did the same thing with the gas power plant, where they forced the previous provincial government to step in and stop that from happening. And I believe that there are certain issues, and this is one of them, where you can't simply wait for the process to play out because rules are stacked against us. And what we need to do is turn it into a political issue, because the only way to actually stop it, only way of actually stopping this project is to get the province to issue an MZO and stop this from happening. And I have 7 promises on my website, I should mention that, and this is one of them. And this is one of them not because I wanted to come here and get your votes, this has always been there, because I do believe that there's certain issues that are political issues, not process issues, and this is a political issue. The Premier Ford was here, I was in that audience as well, Bishop Redding, when he said, if people of Milton don't want this, I will not allow it to happen. And all we have to do now, and as a mayor, it's something I promised, and I do make promises, that I will do, is I'll stand up publicly and demand the Premier to simply keep his promise. And as you know, as many of us know, the mayor is the only person who can actually speak on behalf of the municipality, not individual councillors, not MP, not MPP, just the mayor is the only person who can speak on behalf of the municipality. And it's something that as a mayor, I would absolutely 100% do.
And a lot of it's already been said, and of course the process there is at the provincial level. I've already gone on record right in this very hall here opposing the quarry back probably, 2 years ago now. So nothing has really changed as far as I'm concerned. Councillor Tesser-Dirksen, she commented on the confidentiality. This present day council, 9 of us, are sworn to confidentiality there by our lawyers. We're well aware of the risk if we go out of that. But let me not make a promise, but I'm going to make a prediction, okay, that this quarry will not go ahead. Okay, that's a prediction on my part. That's not a promise. Christine is absolutely right. nothing is going to happen until this municipal election is over in Ontario, not just Milton, but wait till the first of the year, and I think most of us are going to be reasonably happy here. Do I have any insight into it? No, but the Premier is well aware of that suggestion. Call it a promise if you wish. If the mayor didn't want it, if the citizens of Milton didn't want it, he didn't want it either, so I'll remind him of that.
So I'm not on council right now, but I know this provincial government because I've had to deal with them for education issues. And in 2019, there was a big, there was an announcement that they were going to implement 4 e-learning courses and raising class size averages across the province. And under my leadership, the trustees said, hey, wait a second, we want to hear from the people. And what happened was we set up a consultation. We set focus groups up, 3 across the region, and we had surveys done, and the province said it was doing a consultation as well. And we heard from almost 7,000 people in Halton. We sent our consultation results to the province, and they backed down. Our consultation ended up to be larger than their response at the provincial level. And they backed down because this government listens. They want to hear from the people themselves. So this issue, the quarry issue, it is one of those things that needs to come from the people as well. This needs to be a full force, a full wave at the province to say no.
Okay, we have a question back here, but yeah, to all of you, I would agree that we have to work, a small group of people working together is what will change the world, because it's the only thing that's ever changed the world. So we had a question back here. Yeah. Okay.
But I had another question, and that's related to businesses. So businesses have had a big impact as well with the pandemic and the retaining workers and attracting new workers into the workforce. So just wondering what you feel would be the best way to approach that and how you can support small businesses and medium-sized businesses, large enterprises that are coming into the area.
Okay, we're going to start with the mayoral candidates for that one. So, Mayor Krantz.
Well, Chairman, I heard the question loud and clear there. I'm not exactly sure. I don't want to suppose she is suggesting to use the property tax base to support business. I don't think I heard that. But one of the things that we do have a reasonably strong economic development department that does assist businesses on getting set up there. So that's always been there. I come from a small business background myself. I was in small business for well over 20 years. And you do have to, as a small business, get out there and really work. And I understand the climate, especially with COVID-19 there, it was something a little different for business such as restaurants and other shops such as on surviving there. So there is no, at least as far as I'm concerned, no property tax dollars there to go to support small business. I know the province and the feds, they did have some relief there, I know, and if there was a case for tax relief, if they set up a business, then that's something that the council, the days would look at. But I know there are provincial regulations that govern what you can support and not support. So, see?
Thank you, sir, and thank you for that question. I invite you all to drive down on Nipissing one of these days. A lot of small businesses, small industrial used to exist on the north side of Nipissing, every single one of them has been shut down, and not a single one found space in Milton. Part of the reason why they never found space in Milton is that where they were supposed to go along James Snow, and some of the recent approvals for those mega warehouses happened despite my protest, that space was eaten up by warehouses. So I really see your question in 3 parts. The first part is, what do we do to support small businesses? Number one, we actually need to make sure they have land available here. Right now, If you wanted to open up a mechanic shop in Milton, or an auto body shop in Milton, there's no space available. There's zero space available. If you wanted to actually open up a small business, there's nothing available. There's a feeling, and that brings me to the second part of Milton, if you were a small business and you wanted to go through the approval process, and this is something I've heard from a lot of small businesses, and as a counselor who was in the council, I take that as one of the things I haven't succeeded in. One of the things, as I mentioned before, that I haven't always done a good job, and this is one area where I haven't done a good job, which is a lot of small businesses feel that when they go through the application process, it gets stuck and it takes forever, unlike some of the large developers that can get through really fast. I've dealt with a lot of businesses that were really annoyed at having to pay rent on properties that they couldn't use because they didn't have approvals yet. So it's the second part of your question. We do need to support our small businesses. In fact, if you look at the most recent regional efficient plan that passed, it predicts that Milton will drive away 17,000 existing jobs over 10 years because we will shut down so many small businesses. And some of the reasons are actually fine. You know, some areas have to intensify, but the problem is that we're not providing them alternate to go, and we need to do a better job there. And the third part of the question was around hiring of employees and finding labor. That, unfortunately, the mayor's right. It's not something the municipality can really help in, but we can certainly help with the first two. Speed up the process, make sure you have land available. Right now, office space in Milton costs more than it does in Mississauga, and that's absolutely unacceptable.
We'll go this way, clear.
Thank you. This is, oh, has it died? Yeah, it died.
We'll share.
We're going to be yelling soon. Thanks for the question. Yeah, I agree. It's a two-part answer. So there's a broader policy consideration that needs to be made as far as land use planning, like Sishan was saying, right? Like we have to make sure we have the space available. I've gone through the process of trying to find office space. I've talked to people who are trying to open, you know, personal training gyms and that sort of thing. The square footage is just not available, and if it is, they're priced out of the market. So the land use planning has to be addressed. The second part of the question, I would say, is more like grassroots supporting of small business. I'm a member of the Milton Chamber of Commerce Board, and this is something we discuss very frequently, right? Like, how do we support our small businesses? That's our mandate. So there's all kinds of programs and supports available, but we have to, number one, let people know that they're available. Number two, help them apply and take advantage of them. And number three, make sure they're successful and they're feasible and they're cost effective. We do have a great economic development team at the town of Milton, and I've actually connected a couple small business owners, some of whom are in this room, with that team when they have questions or if they need help promoting or being connected with clients. So there are avenues available. I can't, and none of us can step in though and save a small business that is just not feasible. So this is something I've run into too, where it's, you know, kind of gut wrenching that you have small businesses that are trying to make a go of it, especially through the pandemic. But it's just one of those things that nor no one else can really save them. So that's another thing that's really difficult for me to say. My husband owns a small business, right? Half our income is supported by a small business. So yeah, so reach out. I mean, if you have questions, if you have a small business and you want to be connected or you want to take advantage of what we have available at the town of Milton, just let us know.
So your question is right up my alley. I talk to business people all the time. And during the pandemic, I wrote several different articles about how businesses can actually adjust and survive during this time frame. Some people acted appropriately and did the right things, and others didn't act fast enough. But what I observed in Milton, when you're taking a plaza and you're going to tear it down to put an high-rise in there, you're taking away retail space. You're taking away office space. That is not conducive to small businesses. It's just not. And the struggle for small businesses is that they need to be in a competitive area. They need traffic. They need other competitors that they can have something in common with, so they're attracting more traffic. The key here is that if you want to stay in business in Milton, you have two choices. You're going to find a location that works for you, and there aren't many, or you're going to have to learn to operate from home, and not every business is conducive to that. Now, I do know the town is thinking about allowing businesses working from home, and that depends on the type of business. But I will tell you that we need to become more business friendly than we are today, and I have shared with others that part of my mission on being elected is that we're going to start attracting large companies as well, because when you do that, and I don't mean large facility logistics centers with 30 people, I mean vertical home offices, you don't have a number. But at the end of the day, what has to happen is bring those in, the economic situation changes, people have more money in their pockets, and you're driving more income locally, and the economy grows.
This is great. I brought batteries. Now this one's working. I was Girl Guide.
There's one right there.
There you go. So I heard part of your question was about finding employees as well. And one of the problems is affordable housing. Smaller businesses rely on local employees. Large businesses, especially large retail like Walmart and things like that, they can afford to bus people in from other places where the housing is more affordable. Small businesses can only work within very small areas. So affordable housing could make a big difference here. Also, good transit. Again, because if you can get people, depending on the kind of employment that is available, if it's retail or something like that, it's not a high wage kind of employment. Therefore, a car may not be a primary way for people to get around. But if you have good transit, that will also help. And I know that's under a municipal mandate right now, but I'd actually like to look at raising it to the regional level like a number of other regions have across the province.
Thank you. I had a question with the back from earlier. My hand was up. Did they say forget it? Okay, then, ma'am, you were next.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much. The town of Milton declared a climate emergency a few years ago. Since then, we've seen very little action and few, if any, resources allocated to address climate change. So I'm asking, and some of you have talked about the role of municipal councillors and other politicians, in lobbying and advocacy at the provincial and federal level. So my question is, what will you do to ensure that Milton is doing its part to be carbon neutral by 2050? And the second part of that is, how will you use your voice to lobby and advocate both at provincial and federal levels?
That's all.
Okay, great. So I love the question, by the way. So one of the things that I'm advocating for is that I want to see a scorecard, an environmental scorecard, on the website of Town Milton. I have seen it elsewhere. I've seen it in the city of Guelph. It's amazing. You, as residents, will get to see how the town is actually working on net zero, on sustainability, on how they're managing different issues. It doesn't exist. In fact, I think they just struck a deal to create digital, right? And now we can send emails. Is that it? Or, but the point is that we need that level of performance. Otherwise, the accountability is not there. And to me, it's all about accountability. And how do I do net zero? Let me tell you, I say two things when it comes to sustainability, for example. Right? It is a joint effort. It has to involve everyone, because it's about the human factor, it's the social, it's the economic, and the environmental. Everything has to be connected. But there's another word that everybody's going to hate, and it's hypocrisy. The hypocrisy is that we talk about it, we want to believe that we're a part of it, but we don't do enough about it. And if we really all want to change something, we all have to be a part of that, so that the town can actually take it seriously enough as well and create that scorecard. Then you're going to get yourself to that net zero number more effectively, and it'll be measurable, you'll see it, and it's that accountability. I cannot let go of that word.
Thank you for the question. I'm proud to say I was the councillor who brought forward the declaration of the climate emergency along with some action items. And actually the town of Milton has done probably more than people realize as far as addressing sustainability and climate change. They just didn't publicize it very well. Not to say there isn't more to do, but if you can go on our website, you'll see a corporate sustainability plan, you'll see a community sustainability plan, you'll see the different groups that we've signed on to, like the Partners for Climate Protection. where we've dedicated to bringing our emissions to a certain level. We've been retrofitting town facilities so that they're more environmentally friendly. And I am assured by our CAO, who I ask all the time about this, I'm assured that everything at the town of Milton is being looked at through a green lens, is what he says. So I think a scorecard's a good idea, actually, because I think it's easier to see the results in one place. If you had the time to pour through all the reports and look at everything, you'd probably be able to put together your own scorecard, but it'd be much better if there was something more readily available, and that's something I'd be happy to support. I did also bring forward a motion to ban single-use plastics at town facilities. So that's some kind of more of a local impact piece that I'm hoping to see more practically implemented very soon. So we have a long way to go, and like George said, it really is a collective effort, but you just need community leaders like Sustainable Milton, who've become a force to be reckoned with in the past few years. So thank you for all your excellent advocacy work and your grassroots work and getting your hands dirty work. That's really where the magic happens. So happy to continue to support everyone who has a like-minded desire to protect our environmental health.
Thank you. I will try to keep it short because otherwise I'll go over time and I can talk a lot about this issue. Scorecard, dashboards, not just a great idea, but it's something I've talked about repeatedly because that's what I do in my private sector life as well. Not just on this area, but every area. You should be able to go to milton.ca and look at different sections and see how we're performing. For example, we actually have an urban forestry master plan that we have never started implementing, and I've brought it up repeatedly year after year. We are approving a lot of condos, a lot of growth is coming in condos, but if you look at underground parking lots, there is no EV charging station, and we're not ready for the EV revolution that's coming. We talk about waste diversion, but even as a councillor, I don't know how well we're doing actually. I don't know how much waste we're diverting and whether we're doing everything we can. Are we composting in business areas, non-residential areas really, and our own town hall as much as we can? We talked about going paperless. So a lot of things that we can do, that there are ideas, but it does need a will to implement. And unfortunately, where things have traditionally died down in the town of Milton, and Christina's right, there is a lot that Milton has done that doesn't get recognized, but a problem is that a lot of discussions in Milton start with, will it cost money? If yes, don't do it. And unfortunately, we do have to invest for a future. And sometimes things cost money in the short term, and then you create an environment where it pays dividends. And just to link it to the previous question, if you look at municipalities that have higher standard of service, whether it's environmental sustainability or anything else, they're not a result of high taxes, they're a result of a strong business community, because businesses pay 1.5 times the tax rate and they don't ask for much in return. And when you look at communities like Oshawa with high tax rate, it's not because they have a high service standard, it's because they have a weak business community. So if you want to invest in the community, we need to strengthen our business community. It's not as simple, if we spend money, our taxes go up, if we don't spend money, our taxes come down. It's really a much more complex picture that we need to handle in a holistic way. Thank you for the question.
Again, thank you very much for the question there. You heard me in my opening comments. I made a comment that I am certainly not a climate change denier, far from it. You'd also heard me mention that Milton is in the process of going electric with buses in some of our fleets. So a lot of that's happening. Some of the points has already been made by some of the former speakers. And I just wonder, and I don't want to see hands go up, but I'm one of the ones as well that still drive a gas-guzzling car. And I suspect most of you out there are just like me. So you got to be very careful as an example. And I use this to illustrate, and I'm pointing a finger at the town of Milton, because if I do that, I got 3 coming back at me, because I'm just as much to fault as, say, the town of Milton, because I'm not contributing at this point to climate change because of driving a gas-guzzling car. So it all starts with every one of us, including me.
Okay, so as someone who teaches programming at university and is a programmer, I love data. I love the idea of a dashboard. It makes a lot of sense. But I believe in continuous improvement. Change for the sake of change is no good. So let's look where we can find best practices and bring them to Halton to achieve net zero. Let's look beyond our borders. Let's look to Europe, Let's look to Japan. Let's look at our waste. You know, we're filling a landfill right now. Is that the best way to deal with our waste? Probably not. So how about we look at making clean energy? How about we look in other areas? Look at geothermal. Look at living roofs. Let's, you know, when businesses are coming in, let's negotiate with them to say, hey, why don't, come here. We'd love to have you. We'd love your tax money, but we would also like you to make a living roof or some other contribution to net zero going forward. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Well, first of all, I look forward to the dashboard, but also I hope, this is my little commentary, I get that once in a while, is that I do hope that you will give some recognition to the farmers and landowners, especially here in Nasquia, who have all that natural area and that. So, and when you're doing this, that don't count us out and just regulate us. Just we're doing a good job. So. And then we're getting there. Don't worry, we got lots of time yet. So go ahead, sir. Right in front.
Got to bounce it off the back wall.
Okay.
Canadians spend more in summer to cool than they do in winter to heat. It makes no sense in a cool country. Toronto changed its bylaws to permit green roofs. Very effective. They cool in summer and they warm in winter. Can you change the Milton bylaws so that private industry takes over the job of making this a good environmental town?
Mayoral candidates. Gord, you start that. Changing bylaws to make it more environmentally.
Listen, Council, in our wisdom or the lack thereof, we can do anything with it, with bylaws. Usually what we should do is take professional advice when it comes to this. I'm certainly not opposed to green roofs, far from it. If it works, it works. And I'm well aware that there's a cost involved, but I think it's a worthwhile cost when you go that route, because it's already proven, such as you had mentioned in the city of Toronto. So, with high-rise and businesses, some of the businesses that here, I understand that they already have them. We're guided, of course, by provincial guidelines when it comes to building codes and stuff like that, and we adhere to them, but I know there's room there to deviate a bit from them, especially if it's to the advantage of climate change. So anything that's reasonably, to building in the regional chair candidate mentioned about affordability. Of course, when you start talking about affordable housing, you got to be careful of what you do, or it becomes unaffordable. But again, if it can be proven to be beneficial, then count me in.
Thank you. That's a great question. I'll actually touch a few areas. The city of Seattle a few years ago, actually now it's more than 10 years ago, they started requiring green roof on every building. They stopped planting grass and moved towards more local plants. They're more natural, they survive with a lot less water than grass, especially in boulevards and public areas. They also started requiring much better rainwater collection. And they required that throughout the city. This didn't decrease affordability. I think one of the things that I always had an issue with, and I think many of us have an issue with, is this sense that affordable housing means poor quality housing. And that should be the case. We have to build high quality housing that's also affordable. The council has actually discussed green roof. We have discussed putting solar panels on our municipal buildings. We've discussed a lot of these strategies. Unfortunately, they always fail to pass the majority of the council. And actually some of the former councillors in this room, and they were in the council when that was discussed, and it's been failing ever since. I think, and I say it fully respectfully, I think it's a lack of political will. It's not the lack of resources or lack of our ability to do things. And I do believe that it's something we need to get into and really revisit and rethink how we do things. And for that account, One thing that most residents don't know, Milton is still going off of the official plan that was thought of almost 30 years ago. It passed 25 years ago, and the world has changed in the past 25, 30 years. We desperately need a new official plan that rethinks how we grow. Not just individual buildings, but communities. I mean, how do we design 15-minute neighborhoods so you can walk places and bike places? So you can fulfill most of your needs, daily needs, by walking, and you don't have to get in a car. So it's not just a simple issue of green roof. We need to rethink how we develop. Unfortunately, we're still developing the way we used to do in the 80s. Even though we've learned a lot, we haven't implemented that yet, and that needs to change. Thank you for that question.
Thank you. Yeah, the short answer is yes. I think that's a great idea and something we've tossed around. We talked about doing pollinator gardens on rooftops as well. There's a lot of easy, kind of low-hanging fruit that you can utilize in order to ramp up, your sustainability scorecard. So certainly it's something we can bring forward. It's something we can review. And then we have recommendations or studies and all that stuff. It's bureaucracy, right? But Zisha's quite right. It requires the majority of council to approve it. And I'll tell you, I would say as recently as maybe 6 years ago, these discussions would not really be getting much attention around the council table from a large number of the councillors. It's just been recently because we've been hearing from you, we've been hearing from residents, and we've been hearing more climate science that's making it undisputable that something has to be done, right? So the ears are opening. I'm optimistic for the future and for the next term of council that we'll be able to move even further into some more of these innovative ideas. And really, even as individual councillors, we can support, again, the work of organizations in town. If you go to the Italian Cultural Center of Milton, they have a native seed garden growing there. So there's different places where they don't necessarily need politicians involved, but our support, I'm sure, is greatly appreciated. And that's something I definitely would continue to support and hope to see more of those great initiatives in the future that I can support.
So it's a great idea. The idea is to get to net zero. That is the premise behind a lot of these initiatives. But in order to get there, we have to start investing in this and taking it seriously. So what we really need is green engineers who are going to be able to craft these structures, and because they are different. There's a lot more weight load on them, because particularly if you're putting soil on them and everything, it changes. But at the end of the day, it's getting to net zero. And if you don't mind, I need to mention net zero. Because what a lot of people think is that all of a sudden we're just going to stop using gasoline cars, and that we're going to get there. That net zero number also comes from carbon credits. And by the way, I've talked to a lot of people about carbon credits, and it's almost like equivalent to cryptocurrency. And because where the sources are for all of this coming. But sir, what you're talking about is a very real green initiative that actually adds true carbon credits back into the system and gets to net zero. So I think what we need to talk about more is have a much broader discussion about what is it we're trying to achieve with all of this and the timelines that it takes to get there. Because net zero is 2050, that's 28 years from now.
What if the region can we change bylaws and things like that?
Well, as I mentioned the last time I spoke, I really think we need to look for best practices around the world and bring them here. Innovation is where it's at. There, as been mentioned, there may be a little financial pain in the beginning, but long-term gain. And we should definitely be moving forward with, I'm actually really happy to hear the answers that I've been hearing here. And there is, over at Mohawk College, they actually have an academic building there that is net zero. And you can go and see, they have wall parts cut out and have descriptions, and you can go take a look, and it is really amazing. And we should be pushing that for new buildings that are coming into the region.
So that's, no more questions about environment, just because we want other topics unless we run out of questions, but it doesn't look like that. So this gentleman right here first.
Yeah, speaking of bylaws, just wondering what you folks could do, or promise, or do in the future towards reducing red tape, particularly in bylaws. Bylaws get very erroneous. I can read through them pretty good myself, but it's a challenge. And just recently, without getting into the deep details, I had occasion to go to the planning department to get a clarification on the bylaw. And I got an explanation, and when I went back and read the bylaw, it was totally the opposite. And I went back and challenged one of your staff at the board, and after reading it, fully apologized and said, and they were giving this information to other people, and for small business in particular. So what can we do going forward to reduce the transcript in bylaws, particularly Christina being a lawyer, it's all legal jargon most of the time. What can we do going forward? Because there's savings to the dollar, the bottom dollar, if we can reduce.
And Harry, if you don't mind, if I can add even timelines for getting things approved?
Exactly.
Like, can we add that to that question as well?
Very much so.
Okay. So let's start with our local councillors this time. George?
So I'm glad you asked the question. I've been knocking on doors, and I'm hearing a lot of that. So people are asking the same question. In fact, I spoke to one gentleman who has been waiting for approval for his plan for his home for 3 years. And it's really ridiculous what he's going through. I cannot give more details than that on this one because I didn't want me to. But the point is, if we really want to simplify things, the red tape needs to come down. It shouldn't exist. And I'm not sure if it's volume or lack of staff. You know, there's 3 things that usually happen in business, in any organization: lack of resources, lack of knowledge, or lack of execution. It's one of those 3 things that's actually the barrier. And you know, I think that you can change bylaws, but I also think you need to do a diagnosis of the organization inside to determine what is it that's actually gone wrong and it's not working.
Yes, good question. We've all experienced that frustration, and I will offer that I'm a part owner of a property, and we've been trying to convert its use, and it's coming up on 3.5 years, you know, and I'm a counselor. Obviously, I have no input in the decision making, but yeah, it's very painful. And I think George touched on it when he said lack of resources. We, at the town of Milton, run a very lean machine. And sometimes that's not always a good thing. We need to have the people available to do the work. They get overwhelmed, things get backlogged. If there's any, you know, hitch in the system that kind of throws things off, it results in huge backlogs. So I think we need to look at the human resource and make sure that we're investing in that, because without the people at the town, our staff doing this work, nothing gets done. It grinds to a halt. So that's definitely an issue. As far as actually looking at how bylaws are drafted, I mean, they're drafted for judges ultimately to interpret. So the lawyers and judges don't think like normal people, right? We use all kinds of ironic language, and there's all kinds of contingencies that have to be considered. So the language is going to continue to probably be puzzling, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to understand it. So I have had people email me in my counsel capacity and say, I'm having an issue with bylaw. Can you help me? And usually, we're pretty good at contacting the manager directly and getting clearer answers. And if the answer we're getting is still very convoluted, legal language, we ask for like an actual reply that we can take back to a resident that makes sense, right? So I understand that point as well. So I think overall, it's, again, you've got 2 levels. You've got the broader issue of having more resources, more staff that are trained to deal with these issues and give you the right answers and consistent answers. And then also have the capability to have a clear answer. And that's something that you can contact your counselor for if you're not getting it from staff.
Thank you, Susan. It's your fault as a lawyer. When I was first elected, there was a planning report that came forward, and it was talking about a podium. And the word of lie, I'm embarrassed to admit that I started thinking, what the heck has podium have to do with building? Because I was picturing a speaker. And that's because a lot of languages used in planning and bylaws is not language that we use in daily lingo. And so one of the things, I had a series of motion back in 2010 to 2014 council that changed the language in planning. So now when you look at a planning application, it's in simple English that I can understand. You could have understood before as well, but I couldn't. Unfortunately, that thing didn't happen in bylaw is not because of lack of desire, it's because we actually have no staff. I'll give you a simple example. Right now, we need a nuisance bylaw. Milton is probably the only municipality in Ontario that has no nuisance bylaw. And our staff is working on it, but they have absolutely no time, and something might take 6 months, might take a year, might take however long. And until we have staff that can translate these bylaws into simple English and put them on the website so you can go there and simply read them, nothing will change. But you have a second part to the question as well, which is, I met a business owner on Main Street about a month ago. They were applying for a permit and they got one answer from the town of Milton and a completely opposite answer from the region of Halton. And they had no idea how to resolve that. And that should happen. And one thing that absolutely should happen, again, my website is one of the promises, yet again, is there needs to be a one window for approval. So you go to one window, you go to town hall, you apply for whatever permit you need, and then if you need permit from 5 different agencies, from Conservation Halton, from Region of Halton, then we circulate it. Because they're just advising bodies anyway. We get the comment, and then we give you an approval, or we tell you, look, you need to change the 3 things, and you get them, and we have a strict timeline that we abide by. The reason we don't have timeline is because we choose not to hire staff to process all the applications, it's on us. So number 1, simple, easy to understand English language on the website. Number 2, single window of approval. Number 3, strict timeline. Thank you for the question.
Again, when it comes to reducing red tape, I'm all for reducing red tape. As an example, I think there's some 20-odd boards and agencies that are circulated when there's an application comes in, and I have to get involved every once in a while in sorting some of it out. As an example, there's the white belt, there's the green belt, there's the NEC, there's Conservation Halton, there's heritage aspect. There's just a whole host of things. So let's start in reducing some of those, and most of those are at the provincial level, believe it or not, and they're the ones quite often that'll hold things up. So, and I know some of you in the rural area here, you're caught in some of those. Listen, that is a provincial jurisdiction. We can advocate for changing that. I advocated a long time ago to do away with the Niagara Escarpment, and I was a commissioner at the time, and still am. The province still has the NEC there. I've also advocated on giving total planning to, say, the region of Halton, or in this case, the town of Milton. The province wouldn't have anything to do with that. So it's that frustrates individuals such as yourself, sir, that, you know, was it lack of knowledge with the individual? I'm not sure. And again, we've got a fairly, competent staff there, so whatever happened there, it could have been something else. And you heard me say that I get involved once in a while, and it's sorted out in a heck of a hurry, regardless whether it's the NEC, Conservation Halton, Green Belt, White Belt, or Minister of Natural Resources, floodplains. Half the downtown of Milton is in a floodplain, so good luck on trying to do anything there. So you think it's frustrating to the average individual. You might want to be an elected person like me and some of us on dealing with some of that, red tape.
So I don't know if this is comforting or not, but myself and my 2 opponents, we all live in Burlington, actually, and the same problem exists there. So it is not just a Milton problem. There's a lot of red tape everywhere. And as an IT consultant, I'm always looking for efficiencies. At the school board, Donna will tell you, I looked for efficiencies wherever possible, and I implemented lots of them, because I would always ask, why are we doing it this way? Is this the best for the system? Is this the best for parents? Is this the best for staff? Is this the best for trustees? And once you go through that list and say, no, actually it's not. Well, let's do it better. Let's always continuously improve. That is a motto of mine, and I'm going to take it wherever I go. So I hope to take it to the region. Thank you.
Okay. Yep, back there on the table. Yep. Oh no, now you sir. Gotcha.
Hi there. So you can touch a little bit on this. I know a lot of us in Nassau feel like at times we are forgotten and overlooked. And John, I sat on committee for
And I'm hard to ignore, I know.
And one of the things that's happened at the town is that a number of the residents advisory committees, really the direct line, we have Nassau community consultation committee, we've got testing home, but it's not that kind of direct line. So I'd
All right, we'll start with the mayor candidates. Please go right ahead.
Thank you, sir. So, all right. I can't turn the microphone on either. Don't hold that against me. Thank you for that question. I actually didn't know the question was coming, I promise. But if you look at my flyer, one of the promises I have in there is a rural advisory committee. And the reason is that, as I admitted, openly and plainly, I don't have all the answers. I have a limited life experience. But we have 140,000 citizens in Milton that have different life experiences, and we want to figure out how to get them all involved. So when it comes to rural issues, folks in this room understand them a lot better than I ever will. And if I don't have a venue where you can come and educate me, I'll never be able to make better decisions. And it's not just limited to rural advisory committee, it's also, we used to have, like I said, heritage advisory committee and transit and everything else. We need to get people involved. One of the things that happen in these advisory committees is that you have staff, you have councillors, and you have citizens. And the three groups work together to build things. In absence of these committees, a report comes to the council on Thursday ahead of a vote Monday. So now as citizens and as councillors, we have 4 days to read the report. The previous council meeting was one of the lighter ones. We ended in a couple of hours. It was over 1,000 pages long. So you have 4 days to read over 1,000 pages, research them, understand them, and come out and give feedback. And even as councillors, I can tell you it's not enough time. And this doesn't happen in other places that have strong advisory committees, because a lot of work gets done in these advisory committees. And we need to bring them back to Milton, and that's one of my very solid commitments, that if I am elected, you can then judge me on 4 years from now and just kick me out if I don't keep it.
And again, really interesting question. Remember what we were just talking about a few moments ago, red tape. Think about it. Think about it. I guess we have to ask ourselves, is that another red tape circulation that we have to do? Think about it. But an advisory committee I have no problems with. Again, not if I'm elected, when I'm elected as mayor. It's one of the things that majority of council, as far as I'm concerned, has my support on being advised. But I don't want to bog it down in red tape. Good advice from an advisory committee is very critical. So I don't know how much clearer I can be than in red tape. Don't contribute to it, because it can happen. That's what's happened in the past, believe it or not. And that's some of the reasons why some of those committees were disbanded by the majority of council. Maybe one or two of them with my support, maybe one or two of them not with my support, but still majority council rules always. So, great question.
Yeah, and from the regional point of view, they have regional advisory committees.
Yeah.
Yes, so I believe in listening to the community. From a school board perspective, we have a number of advisory committees, human rights advisory, parent engagement advisory committees. We like to hear from student voice as being part of the system. And I think that, people we have to remember that government is for the people, and people need to be heard. As regional chair, I actually, one of the things I've heard as I've been walking around is people in the north, so Milton and Halton Hills, aren't feeling heard at the regional table. And I would like to commit to holding at least one of the regional council meetings in the north, so that it's easier for people to come and to delegate and to be heard. So, but certainly community committees are an important part of government. Thank you.
For local councillors, I appreciate it.
Thanks, great question. I get that people sometimes don't feel heard. I have to say, though, I'm really proud of rural residents, because they come out and delegate en masse, and they're always very articulate and really advocate very well for their community, so keep that up. I'm on the Nassagaweya Community Consultation Committee with Sharon, so I understand the concerns that come through there. I think it's great to have advisory committees, because it makes the job of councillors easier. As Zishan said, we have someone else bringing the issue to us in a concise, well thought out way, which we can then bring to council. I think what's important to remember is that the role of these committees has to be very clearly defined. I think in the past the issue with some of the committees has been that the scope was misunderstood. So what was going on between staff and the committee was nobody really knew what their role was or what was going on, and that's where the red tape piece comes in, right? Then you've got staff time wasted trying to figure out who's doing what. So yeah, in short, I would support that, and I certainly would support a rural advisory committee. I think it's something actually Councillor Best has tried to bring several times. So again, being 1 or 2 votes on council, you know, if the buy-in isn't there, it doesn't pass. So political will, the right councillors, and you would have your advisory committee.
So yes, I am all for advisory committees, and Action Milton should be proof of that in terms of how we voiced our concerns and were heard loud and clear and had to fight our way to get attention. But I also want to say that community groups that want their voice feel frustrated because what's being blocked is the fact that they feel there isn't a lot of transparency. And that lack of transparency brings to question how governance is being practiced. And when that comes into question, you feel that all of a sudden that all these advisory efforts go mute. You know, the mayor's talking about you have to watch the risk of red tape. Well, there wouldn't be risk of red tape if there was transparency and everybody could hear the voices and understand and act on them. So yes, they're all baby steps and you need to invest in all of that, but it does work. And by the way, it's part of democracy. You know, it's easier than holding referendums. You know, it's actually listening to residents and what their concerns are. And I will tell you, every door I've knocked on, everyone has said the same thing.
Okay, so I will print off my presentation that I gave a couple years ago. It'll be all set for the first council meeting. So the gentleman I made sit down earlier, he's next, yes.
Yes, my question is first, Andrea, I noticed that you mentioned putting transit under a regional umbrella, and I think that's a wonderful idea, but I'm sort of wondering as to how achievable it is, and to associate that with the mayoral candidates. My observation of council meetings has been that there's only the local councillors, Jesse Hertzon and Beck, seem to be focusing on town planning issues that encourage public transit. Most councillors, particularly the mayoral candidates, have not focused at all on public transit, and in fact they've encouraged car use by voting in favour of the 430 guideline.
We're going to start with our local councillors on that one. Give you guys more time to think about the answer. And the question is, you know, I think transit is a regional transit versus, you know,
how can you achieve regional transit?
how can you achieve regional transit, and how can you have transit here in the rural area? I think is a better.
How will the mayoral candidates support transit-focused planning?
Okay, all right. Well, we'll start with local council. Christina.
Great, thanks for your question. I did oppose the 413, by the way. Yeah, so transit's expensive, right? It's very costly, and it's one of those things that you hear them say, okay, if you build it, they will come. So you need to have convenient, accessible transit before people are going to change their behavior patterns, right? Of driving their cars everywhere. So you need to invest in transit, and it is costly. As far as regional transit, actually, my colleague, Councillor Ali, brought forward a motion, which I believe I seconded, for what we call the Steeles bus. So this is kind of a little bit of a pilot project on the regional transit side. So what we've got is a bus that's going between Halton Hills and Milton along the Steeles corridor, mainly to support employment for businesses along those areas. And that goes back to the other question, like how do we employment and that sort of thing, make it easier for places to hire folks. So that's a pilot that's underway. And in cooperation with the Milton Chamber of Commerce as well. So we'll see how that goes. The problem with regional transit is that you have to have municipalities agreeing on cost sharing, who's taking on the risk of the physical features of a bus station or bus stop. So there's a lot of red tape, there's a lot of contracts and a lot of lawyers involved, so you can imagine it takes a long time and it's quite expensive. But it's not impossible, other places do it. I think, again, if we build it, they will come. If we have intermunicipal transit within the region, it's going to move people around easier. And then I would even like to take it a step further and have, you know, transit between regions, like we're talking with Peel and other places like that. So again, It's going to take some time, but the baby steps are in place, and there are those of us who are really advocating for that, because every door I knock on, I get complaints about traffic. So the more people we can move out of their vehicles and into transit, that's going to help alleviate our traffic problems as well. So it really is a multifaceted problem with multifaceted solutions.
So I'm going to start with a little short story. So the city of Helsinki is about the size of the region in total. There are about 600,000 people there, and they use what's called mobility as a service. It's actually very unique because everyone in that city has an app, and that app is accessible. They pay a fee every month, and you have choices. You can take a bike, you can take a scooter, you can take rideshare, you can take an Uber-like ride, you can jump on a bus or a commuter train, and you can switch over through all of these. They had the challenge of how to make it more effective and efficient, and they did it. Not only did they accomplish rolling the system out, they have been reducing the number of people using cars substantially. So, my challenge back to everyone is, this is about innovation. This is not about just cost structure. This is about putting systems in place that already exist and pulling them together so they can work effectively. You don't have to recreate the wheel, you just have to use more imagination and innovation to work this out.
Thank you. Oh, thanks. Thank you for thank you for the question. I would like to set one record straight. One of the biggest criticisms I've ever gotten in my council career is that I'm too pro-transit. In fact, for the first couple of terms, I was pretty much the only councillor there was a period of time when there were 3 or 4 councillors, and I was one of them that was really pushing and arguing for transit. I've actually been to Helsinki 2 months ago, and I used that system you talked about, and if you go to my Instagram, I actually talked about it. There are 2 things with transit that Milton needs to do. Number 1, transit needs a certain transit-oriented design of communities. I alluded to it a little bit ago, that we need to rethink our official plan so we design our communities differently, because the way we lay them out today doesn't lead to an effective transit system. And we can't continue building it that way. So we need to rethink how we design communities and build these 15-minute neighborhoods that I talked about that lead to transit. And the second problem is, when it comes to transit, there's a bare minimum you have to, when it comes to any transportation network, not just transit, any transportation network, there's a bare minimum you have to do for the network to make sense. And if we do less than that, then we might as well not do it. And right now, an average Ontario municipality of 100,000 people, average, not talking about the best, just the average, has a transit system that's 4 times bigger than Milton. And those of you who actually study this, you'll know that they don't spend 4 times as much money. Their system is 4 times bigger, but sometimes actually spend less money than Milton because it's used effectively. The issue with Milton is that we don't have a transit system that works. I have a daughter that goes to McMaster. We drive 15 minutes one way so she can take a bus. And our son goes to Waterloo. We drive 15 minutes the other way so he can take a bus. And there are not a lot of places where we drive for 15 minutes so you can take a bus. And last question about regional transit. Town of Oakville has been against it, and that's why it hasn't gone anywhere in the region. But that is the norm. What happens in Toronto when you slice and dice transit, that's an anomaly. Generally speaking, transit's metropolitan most of the world. It really should be Metrolinx transit, but in absence of that, we absolutely need regional transit. Thank you for the question.
And again, I'm all in favor and I've always supported the Milton Transit, and I've been talking about regional transit now for quite a few years. And I think what you're going to find in not too distant future is going to be interregional transit, whether it be Metrolinx or whoever it might be that'll be running it. Still, believe it or not, one of the biggest complaints that I get about transit today is the lack of individuals using it. And my colleagues here, Councillor Rick Melbooth, who by the way was acclaimed as well, he quite often, whenever he gets the chance, the single biggest complaint that he gets is seeing the buses run around half empty. So who's to blame for that? I guess people like you and I. I do walk to work, by the way, so I don't need to take my car to work. So it's not me that's contributing to that. But until we get out of our cars and use public transit, that's going to still It says, now, one of the things the question was 413. That was quite a debate. That bus has already left the stop. It's going to happen because one of the biggest complaints that I quite often get is gridlock, not only in the town of Milton, but in the region of Halton, get out on the 401. So I believe that will help gridlock. But one of the things that I get a fair bit of opposition to is densities. And, you know, whether it be a building of 10 stories, 15, 20, 30, all those are being advocated now. Until you get densities in a community, transit systems, they're not even going to come close to paying for themselves. And I don't have to be reminded that the whole world doesn't evolve around the almighty dollar, but believe it or not, a good portion of it does. And, you know, it would be just about as cheap for you and me with your and my property tax dollar to pay, for the most part, to pay a taxi to take an individual where he or she is going is very, very expensive.
As we grow in Halton, we have to recognize that people want to move around. Milton will probably be the largest municipality in Halton, so it is very likely that people from Burlington, like they live in Burlington, but they're employed in Milton. Right now, in order to go from Burlington to Milton on public transit, you take a GO bus to Winston Churchill and take another GO bus to Milton. It's crazy. We need to change that. We need to have, we need to look at transit at a broader scale. And yes, talking to our adjacent regions and making transit seamless. I would love for the province to take this on. I don't really see it happening yet. So let's do what we can here. We have, in fact, talking to people in Milton, as I've been walking around and talking, a lot of people, that's one of the first things that comes out of their mouth is, I expected better transit. We need better transit. So many people are moving from places that have good transit, Toronto and other places. They come here expecting to be able to jump on transit, and it's not fulfilling their needs. So they end up buying a car, contributing to gridlock and our carbon footprint. So we need to really look at this from a long distance projection.
The time that you are taking. I would like to build a little bit on the advisory committee question. One, have you read Dave Messon's Tear Down? I'd really like to know if any of you have, and if you haven't, I'd like to encourage you to do so. And number two is, instead of advisory committees, what about citizen assemblies that might be reducing the red tape and increasing the participation? I have participated in a number of events, shall I say, because they really were more of events, to get participation from people around the tables and bring it into the planning process in Milton, and I congratulate them for trying to do that. I've seen very little of that input used in any of the actual planning that's gone on, which is really frustrating. And I'm hearing people around the table tell them things, and that I'm not seeing any of that information used. So I'd like to ask the council if they're committed to evolving this council into another level of participation so that we can reduce red tape and involve the citizens.
That's an interesting question. Okay. All right, we'll start with the mayor. Mayor Krantz, we'll start with you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Maybe if you could just give me a simple illustration as what you would like to see, I think it would be a little clearer, because it's pretty broad what you were suggesting there. So I want to try and zero in on what you're advocating.
Like, is it like when the region has had some large focus groups that come together and then they kind of rank what they think is priorities and then goes forward?
It's similar to that, but citizen assemblies are more like advisory committees where they are standing. They're standing committees, and citizens are rotating through. So it's almost like an elected position.
So they're like appointed or something.
Exactly.
For a certain term.
But there's a regular turnover with allowing for all the different opinions from the different areas, including our very heavy rural areas that are not well represented.
Is that clear?
Yeah, that's certainly a little clearer. And again, I have no problem with saying advisory, call it what you wish, to being advised there. And usually there's a staff person or two that has to be involved with that to regulate that. The last thing you want to do is have a politician like me or some of us up here, advising council. You have to have a professional. There's guidelines there that has to be followed or should be followed there. And I hear you loud and clear. You don't want any further red tape. I sure as heck don't want any further red tape.
Thank you. I don't like the use of term red tape when it comes to hearing from citizens. That's actually, the two things should never be mentioned together. They say, whoever they are, the dictatorship is the most efficient form of government, democracy is the least efficient form of government. The purpose of democracy is not to be efficient, it's to be inclusive. And when people talk about red tape, they talk about something else. They talk about, bylaws that nobody understands, or you do an application and it tells you to go to 17 different agencies on your own and come back with approval. That's red tape. Listening from people is not red tape. And that has been one of my strengths, and yes, I do commit that we need to bring advisory committees back, whatever we call them. I have not read the book, and I will not be able to read it until October 24th, but I do promise to read it soon after that. Maybe a week break and then read that. So we do need to bring advisory committees back in some communities, and I'm not suggesting Milton does that, and I'm not suggesting other communities do it intentionally, but in some communities, citizen engagement is just a checklist item that has to be done. So staff's working on a report and they hear from citizens, and typically what happens is that you ask people to delegate to the council when all the work is done. And it causes a lot of frustration. There's actually a couple of people in this room who have felt that and expressed it to me and other councillors, where they come in and they give us a presentation on something, we don't even have time to think about it because the report's already written. It's a 700-page report, and we move on to debate and we vote however we're going to vote before them talking. So they feel that there's no point coming to the council, and they're not wrong. And the way to solve that is to get citizens involved before the report gets written, so their input is part of the process, not something that happens after the fact, and that can only change with citizen advisory committees, which does have staff. Everyone else can do it. I'm done. Thanks.
I didn't say it yet. I love the power. I know. It's just...
Thank you for the question. The book has been recommended to me several times. I have not read it yet. I will get to it. Okay, I'll listen to it. The concept of a citizen assembly, and I haven't seen one in action, so I think what I'd like to see is an example of where it's being used in a similar municipality and how it's being rolled out. Again, as long as the terms of reference are there and very clear, and as long as the scope is well defined, and as well as everybody knows what their role is and what they're supposed to be doing, and as long as we have staff that are experienced in dealing with them, or educated in how to deal with them, and council as well, it sounds like it could work, right? I'm all for more participation, and I agree with Zishan when he says that we need to have citizen engagement earlier on, and I have found that same frustration where, you spent the time going through the reports, you've asked your questions of staff, and then you have delegates, and you're like, okay, there's a whole other layer here that actually we didn't know about because we didn't hear from this person yet, and it's not their fault. So that engagement earlier on is very important. And I think that's when I said earlier that the advisory committees will help council, it'll be less work for council to do their own research, really. That's what I meant, right? You have a group of individuals who looked into it and may present you with several recommendations, options, and then as a councillor and as a council, you can make the decision based on that. So I think it's a good idea. I would like to see some examples of how citizen assemblies work in municipalities like Milton first.
I actually think it's revolutionary. It really is, because if you think about this, you have, I'm sure that councillors may not be happy with the idea, but you have a lower level of oversight by having that assembly. And for those of you that don't know what ESG is, it's environment, social, and transparent governance. You eliminate and reduce a lot of friction between groups and how things are done when you do have that lower level. It's not government, but it's oversight. And I believe that it is actually brilliant, and it can work, provided it's structured effectively and it's not a runaway train and doesn't bog down in politics and internal, egos, which happens a lot in different groups. But I do like it, and I would certainly support it.
So across Halton, the participation in the last municipal election was under 40%. And I think that groups like this, a Citizens Assembly, help engage people in their communities. It helps get information forward. It helps with the really short time. We have longer timelines at the Board of Education. I'm actually kind of shocked. It's 4 days. It's a way to really get a kickstart and take a deeper look at what the problem is and what people think about it before it comes in a report to the table, where you have to make what sounds almost like a snap decision on a 700-page, because it wouldn't be your only report either. I'm for looking into that, and I'd like more information about that book. I hadn't heard about it. It's called Tear Down, is it? Yeah. Yes. Okay, thank you.
Okay, now we're gonna have the last question way at the back. But just to this, the last question, I like that they have, educated, concerned citizens be involved, but I don't want to see it governance by Twitter, because that we can't have that. We saw that work 4 years ago in the States. But yes, sir.
I'd like to ask a question with regard to come back to bylaws and planning. On August the 25th, I was an online participant in the Committee of Adjustment Zoom meeting that was still seen on the YouTube channel. In the course of the meeting, the question came up of why large houses were still being built in the downtown mature areas and the character areas. As we all know, in the last few years, the town has widely publicized the development of the character area guidelines and the mature area study. A lot of money has been spent in developing those documents. And so the question was, why are these large houses still coming forward with applications to be built in the character area? And the answer came out during the course of discussion. It's because council gave itself the back door under the provisions of the Planning Act, admittedly. Council gave itself the right and authority to override the bylaws and skip over the need to go and have the bylaw rewritten and go straight to the Committee of Adjustment with whatever approvals came in. In other words, although there was a wall built there was a back door left open for developments to come through.
Okay, so your question?
And the committee, just one moment, the committee asked, the chairman of the committee asked the planning representative, have you ever known council to say no? And the answer was, no, I haven't in my experience. My question, therefore, to the councillors who are sitting at the head of the room is, have you voted yes to bypass the bylaws in this way? 2, will you do anything if you're re-elected to correct this issue, or will you continue to support this kind of conduct? And thirdly, what will you do to change the situation in Milton? This has been going on a long time. As has been pointed out, we have a very old official plan, and we have a ton of amendments. Nobody knows all those amendments. They've been accruing over 20 years.
In the interest of time, I think your third question is the most important. What are they going to do going forward? So, just in the interest of time, that's where I'm going to push them with that. So, we will start. Well, it's not really a regional issue. So, George, you're going to start with this. What would you do if elected to solve this problem of not following the heritage guidelines, etc., and going forward, how are you going to fix these problems?
You mean when I'm elected?
Sure.
I just want to clarify.
I don't want to judge anybody.
So I will tell you, look, what I've been telling people is I want to preserve the past. And I think it's really important that we do. We need to preserve the past, and we need to protect the history of Milton. And in these situations, when they do happen, my purpose would be, as a councillor, would be to question everything about any kind of approval process that leads to changing the face of that whole area. You know, and I want to see the social, environmental impacts of all of it. I'm just not going to sign off carte blanche on something like that. I just won't. And you know, I've seen some of the monster homes. They tower over most of the homes. I was on King Street just today, so I was surprised what I was looking at. I'm going to stand up against it because I believe I really need to protect the heritage of and history of Milton.
Thank you, and I don't disagree with George on preserving heritage. I have a history degree. I love history, I love artifacts, and I love the idea of preserving the conversation we have with the past through the historical record, whether it's through architecture. We talked about this on Wednesday night at the Downtown Milton Business Improvement Candidates meeting. It's important. What the Mature Character Study did was analyze what types of structures would be respectful of the existing neighborhoods, right? So we don't want to change the integrity of a character heritage neighborhood. However, there's this thing called property rights, right? People buy properties and they want to have some flexibility with what they can do with them. So what the Mature Neighborhood Character Study sought to do was identify the types of architectural styles, the sizes, the heights, and that sort of thing, and put some restrictions on that. Your question's a bit of a technical one that I would actually like to take back and look over before I answer it fully. And I'm just answering the third part anyway. But what I would do going forward was have a very frank discussion with our staff to see if that actually is the case. I'm not doubting it is, I believe you. And figure out why it is the way it is, how we can rectify it to make it more just for not only our heritage structures, but also for property owners. They need to be considered as well. And then how we implement that. So I'm afraid I can't give you quite the fulsome answer you're looking for, because I think I need some time to look into it. But I'm certainly willing to do so.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you for that question. I gave myself an out earlier in the meeting when I said I don't have all the answers. And unfortunately, that's an answer I don't have because I don't have the context of your question. So it's something I have to look more into because I don't know the incident you're talking about and the thing that you allude to as a backdoor, I don't know what that is. So it's something I need to figure out, investigate. It's one of the things I don't know. But when it comes to heritage, I can tell you that all the councils, including the mayor, all of us are 100% committed to protecting the heritage. The question isn't on the intention. Wait, I'm coming to it. The question isn't about the intention. The question is about what we do about it and how we go about actually protecting the heritage. And that's where you'll find differences. I think intention you'll find, but it's actually putting money where our mouth is and deciding what is going to happen and how it's going to happen. That's where differences happen, and that's why my first remark, and I didn't know you were going to ask that question, my first remark started off with there used to be a Heritage Advisory Committee. And that was one of the venues that educated me as a councillor on some of the heritage properties and characters that I didn't know about beforehand. And so we need to make certain changes, obviously, but when it comes to actually the intention is there, what I would invite you to do is when you're looking at a platform, look at how different candidates are going to go about protecting the heritage. Because you'll get the answer that everyone wants to protect it, but the how is when you really need to do some homework, and that's when you'll start to see differences. Thank you.
Again, thank you very much for George. I didn't see you on King Street with the Tesla. Yeah. So he doesn't drive a gas guzzler like me. I think the gentleman talked there, and again, like Z here, not totally familiar with that particular issue. I think it's kind of a one-of, I'm not sure. But the monster home thing's been around for quite some time, and I'm not in favor of monster homes either. And I know there's guidelines there already, and I think what you see sometimes with some of those monster homes that have gone up or are going up, they probably were grandfathered some time ago there as well. So because of the legislation, you couldn't go back on it if they made an application, say 2 or 3 years ago. And I know that's the case quite often. So, but it's an interesting, one of the things that you should know too, us elected people are encouraged not to get involved with the Committee of Adjustment and Consent. I wouldn't go so far, Christine, to say it's illegal, but boy, it's promoted that elected people don't get involved in some of their decisions. So it's kind of interesting to say that, you know, the chair, or maybe I heard that wrong, that where council come from on some of that decision. I find that a little interesting for sure, and I'll be pursuing it because those are fairly, things that just isn't right as far as I'm concerned. There's a little smell to it, but Andrea?
No, that was a strictly Milton one, so I'm giving her the, she gets past it.
I just have one question. In the last 4 years, I'm on Heritage Milton, we've lost over 120 houses in the town of Milton.
Okay,
In that
sir,
way.
I think that you saw what they said
No,
about
but
it.
this is
You
just
don't
not
have to believe
me.
them. I didn't say you have to believe them, but that's what they said, that's what's
Well,
going on. And I believe you.
I'm on Heritage Milton with Michael here.
Yeah.
And I'm witnessing all this stuff going on. Large houses are being
replaced,
replacing
replacing the small one. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if councils think that this is not happening, I believe you're
I think they
wrong.
believe it's
Christina helped get a house approved across the street from me. The house is
Okay, so you know what?
2,500 square feet plus a 2-car garage. It's a monster home for one woman.
Okay, and I agree that these things are happening. We're not going to solve it here tonight with it, but I think you made your point that this is a key issue in Milton, the heritage, and I think it will go forward. I'm not defending them, but we have to move along, or it's almost 9 o'clock.
I agree, but you said at the beginning of the meeting, we could go on here all night, so.
Well, no, I just I said 9 o'clock.
Your hands lay eggs all day long.
Well, yeah, my chickens, they come home to roost, so I gotta get home at some point. But, sir, I'm sorry, that was the last question?
So there was a time limit on this?
Yeah, we kind of said 9 o'clock, we had 2 hours of questions, 2 hours pretty much, so I think that's fair.
I didn't think there was a time limit.
Okay.
Well, I only have the permit till 9:30, so I have to clean up and my kids are
Okay,
waiting.
can I have one final one on water?
On water, okay, that's a totally different topic, so sure. I will allow it, and then we'll go a little bit long, and then we'll wrap it up. So prepare for your 2 minutes.
Okay, so
Close
as
the
far
chair.
as the current counselors, thanks for all everybody being here, by the way. All of us have been fighting this quarry, and for me, it's not about trucks, it's not about any of that, it's about water. Fundamental right. And I take offense a little bit, Mr. Mayor, at the beginning of this when you talk about taxes and all that. But many people in this room have put out thousands of dollars to get professional studies, to hire lawyers, to help us with us being responsible to fight on behalf of our right for water. So I ask you, why have you not gone for an MZO, which you could have done? I mean, I don't care about golf courses, that's a whole different ballgame. There's something that's fundamental with water. In my opinion, you should have gone to the MZO. So why hasn't that leadership been shown?
I'll let you respond.
Yeah, very good. You heard me mention earlier on, I know Christina had mentioned it there too, the confidentiality, but we have lawyers engaged, and I'm not going to go any further than that.
Okay. That's your answer? And
that's the easy way out.
I understand that, but if they're going to say it's under confidentiality, I've been on committees where there's confidentiality. You can't say it in a public venue like this. That's just the way it is. And I know I'm not having. I monitor my well. Every 2 months, a guy comes and measures the levels, and that was for when Mohawk was planning their expansion. And Mohawk's still paying for it, and I haven't told them they're paying for it. So, I keep going with that. But I suggest that if you are in any area and you have a well, get it monitored for your quality and your how much is coming out. Because then later on, if something happens, if this quarry comes, you have something to fight with. Say, here for 10 years, I had good water and it was this level, and now I don't. That's on. As citizens, all of us do it. If you want a connection or who to hook up with for that, I can help you out with that to get monitoring going.
I'm not bound by any confidentiality.
No, you're not.
So I would like to speak if I can.
Okay, on the water issue specifically? Okay.
So, I completely agree with you. The risk to all of us is that we don't know what we don't know right now. The town is silent. They're bound by legalities, and there's not much you can do about it. But we have to continue this fight, and the only way to reach it is to continue to petition and lobby the Premier. Because everybody here, with all due respect, they're going to promise you whatever they want to promise you because they need to be re-elected. My only commitment to this is that I wrote, like I said, I wrote this letter. I wrote this letter to be on the record that I am not backing down. And there is no legality that's going to stop me from this point after, from continuing to speak my mind about what is happening here with this quarry. We have raised $250,000, maybe more. We've been spending a lot of money, and we were told, and I don't mind saying this to all of you, we were told by Gowlings, which is a major law firm, that the reason we're in this situation is because planners were playing lawyer. Town had an opportunity to intervene, and it was missed because someone was playing lawyer, and it locked us out. What we need to do is to continue our path with the Premier. That is what we have to do. And if you elect me, we'll see what happens next.
Oh, no, I have things to say.
Okay.
Again, I will reiterate that we have all said repeatedly, and I will speak for myself, we're opposed to the quarry. We know what happened in Guelph with the Doe Line Quarry. JBCL pierced the aquitard. We also know that a big chunk of urban Milton still gets its water from that source, okay? Like, we know how important this is, all right? The stuff with the confidentiality, yeah, you know, our lawyers write legal memos, you're not supposed to share them. There's really nothing all that spectacular in them, I can tell you. You can probably guess what's in them, right? It's about strategy. It's about how we proceed, how we protect the town, how we make sure we're not exposing all taxpayers to risk through lawsuits, okay? We have a fine line to walk. Unfortunately, there are some things we can't just say publicly, but it's really nothing that would shock you, all right? So when someone plays up that point that there's a lack of transparency or that we're under a gag order, it's not true. I will tell you frankly, it's not true. And I'm not bound by confidentiality, and I can say, that part I can say, all right? So continue to work with us. Like, we're not the enemy. And I had to say this in one of the Action meetings because Action's lawyer was basically villainizing Councillor Best and I, who've been working and sticking our necks out, motion after motion, to get this thing dealt with. And I had to say, we're not the enemy here. We all have a common enemy, and it's that quarry company. Now, I'll tell you, it's been 4 years, and there's no quarry yet. Okay, that's a good thing. Please rest assured on that. We're gonna keep fighting. I told someone the other day, and I probably shouldn't say this publicly, but if it gets to the point where I'm chaining myself to a tree at that site, I will do it. Okay, and that is a promise. I haven't promised anything else.
How do I follow that? I'll keep it super short. Everything we do is a trade-off. There's risk versus reward. Every action has a risk associated with it. And sometimes inaction has a higher risk than taking an action. And I've already committed to the action I plan to take, which is I do believe that this issue can only be solved through political advocacy, because it has to be a political solution, not a legal solution. Because the system, if you let these things play out, it's only going to go in one direction. And we have a really good out that the Premier of Ontario publicly made a promise that if citizens don't want it, it's not going to happen. And I don't believe we need to wait. I think we need to create a lot of noise right now to make it clear that, look, citizens don't want it. So, dear Premier, please keep your promise and put a stop to this, because the province of Ontario actually can. And I believe that is the only solution. We need to make a lot of noise politically, turn it into a political issue, because that's the right solution. And that's the solution that Oakville used for multiple projects. That's the solution we're trying to use on CN to some extent, and that's the solution we'll have to use here as well. And just because this is my last thing I'm saying, I'm gonna hang out for as long as you guys are here, so if you have any questions, happy to have one-on-one conversations.
We're all gonna have 2 minutes, 2 minutes.
Oh, should have told me before.
Okay.
Will I still get 2 minutes?
Yep. Okay, just, I know that it is contentious, the quarry is contentious. But I just want to remind you all the topics we ran through in 2 hours. Communication, internet, the quarry on multiple occasions, small business, climate change, green roofs, bylaw, red tape, timelines, rural advisory committee, regional transit, citizen involvement, etc., heritage committees. Like, that's a lot in a 2-hour thing. So thank you as an audience for coming up with good questions. And thank you for being succinct and good with your answers. So now what we're going to do, we're going to give each of them their last pitch. They get 2 minutes to say why you should vote for them. And we're going to start out, how did we, initially, did we start with you, George? No. Okay, then we're going to start over here. Andre, you start. 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. And just a reminder, my name is Andrea Grabens. There are 3 candidates running in this position. I'm the only one that showed up tonight. I do want to hear from you. I believe in transparency. I believe in accountability, and I am accessible. So please consider me for your vote on October 24th. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. This election is about experience, this election is about leadership, and this election is about fiscal responsibility. And again, on October 24th, mark your X for Gord Krantz. Whatever you do, please do your homework on each and every individual that you're going to be supporting. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for coming out. I had a lot of fun. I enjoy having open, candid conversations, so thank you for the questions. And wouldn't our council, wouldn't our decision making be better if we did more of this? Yes. I believe so, and I don't consider this red tape. I think the way we do public engagement in this municipality is very archaic. I've already alluded to that. We do public engagement at the last stage when all the decisions basically done, when the trains left the station, and I'm suggesting flipping it around and then getting public involved in the beginning of the process, not at the end of the process. I don't believe investing in community is a bad thing. I mean, bottom line is really a 3-legged stool. There is financial, yes, but there's also a human and social aspect. There's also an environmental aspect. And it is our job to balance the 3, not just have the financial aspect win every single argument, because then you don't create a nice, livable community. The reason I ran, and I mentioned that story in one of the speeches. I used to have a blog called Urban Village, and the premise of the blog was that you live in a neighborhood that's like a village, where you know your neighbors, where you walk to fulfill all your life's needs. You can drive if you so choose to, but you don't have to. And I believe we can create that in Milton, and I think we do need to create that in Milton, and that's the reason I'm running. I'm not running because Milton is a bad community. I think I love living in Milton. Most of us, whether your ancestors moved to Milton 100 years ago, or you moved to Milton 5 years ago, you moved to Milton because it's a great community. I think Mayor has done a wonderful job over the past however many years. But I think going forward, there's certain things we can do differently. I think there is room to rethink how we build communities and build more livable, more sustainable, better communities. And I think we can do that, and that's the vision I'm promising, not just presenting, promising. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. And again, I'll say thank you for being engaged. Thank you for caring. Thank you for having positions and taking positions. I acknowledge that there will be times where you're a counselor and you disagree on issues. Okay? But what's important is to have the dialogue, to feel like you've been heard and that your concerns have been weighed. We're not always going to get what we want. We try to, it's impossible to make everyone happy in this job, but we try to do our best with balancing the interests for the entire town. And that's really what I've seen my role as a counselor as. It's been a really good learning experience in how people come together, how people can collaborate, how people can cooperate, even when there's differences of opinions. And I feel like a real strength of mine is being that bridge builder and connecting people and making sure that all those voices do get heard, even if sometimes people don't feel that they are being heard. Born and raised in Milton, I've never lived anywhere else. I spend as much time as I can in the community supporting different groups, different organizations. I don't get paid for any of those board positions. I do it with my time because I want to make my community a better place and support and elevate everyone else who's down there in the trenches doing the great work of community building. So if nothing else, please come out and vote. If I were on your side of the room, I would actually be happy with all these options. I think everyone here has the potential of doing a really great job of representing you. And I really hope that you'll reach out, that you'll continue to bring me your questions and concerns, and that we can continue to have that collaborative relationship and get things done. Thank you.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I'm like the odd man out here. These people have been elected. But I want to serve you. And I bring to the table some very different set of skills and experiences that many here don't have. And what it gives you is leverage and access to someone who has a great deal of experience in dealing with different situations, resolving problems, conflict resolution, dealing with colleagues across the table, and getting them on board to approve the things that should be approved. I don't like bureaucracy. There's a man by the name of Max Weber who said that bureaucracy, when it goes bad, it goes dark, and it's called the iron cage. That iron cage becomes a block, and leaders cannot break through. They're led by the iron cage. And it happens in many institutions, and it happens more so in government. I've lived in China, I've broken down the iron cage. I've lived in the US, running companies there, I've done the same thing when you can't. I will be able to do that here and get to the phase where everyone needs to be. And part of that is to lead this community out of being just the fastest growing community to being the smartest growing community. And that is an important step going forward, because I have not heard anybody say that yet. Because it comes with making decisions and commitments to solving a lot of the day-to-day problems that you have. And they are not going to go away unless we start digging into them and start solving them. Thank you.
All right, thank you all for being such a tremendous audience. And of all your great questions, thanks to all the candidates for giving their opinions, their honest answers. Remember, October 24th, get out and vote. Vote early, vote often. And vote once, I guess. Sure.
But take your neighbors, take your friends.
Take people along. Everybody, if you can pick up a stack of chairs. Is that what you're saying, Nicole?